Well, it's really nice to meet you. And before this conversation, I didn't Google you. I just allowed James to share with me a little about you and your story. And the reason this podcast, Man in the Mirror, is really important because it really deals with kind of the issues around the legacy of fatherhood.
Yeah.
And the legacy of fatherhood deals with the type of non-transparent struggles that men suffer and that they're going through and that are exacerbated over time, right?
Yeah.
And I was actually at a meeting a couple years ago, and Sheila E., she used to sing and play drums with Prince, and she's really well known. And we had the same pastor in Los Angeles. And a couple years ago, she texted me. She says, "I'm going to send you this photograph, and it's you. I know it's you. It's a massive picture of you on a wall in a music studio in Burbank. You look like, you're a teenager."
Oh, wow.
So it was when I was a human trafficking victim, they took nudes of us. So it was a nude of me from the waist up all those years later. And she sent it to me, and I started crying. My husband was crying. I was like really in shock. And the woman in the studio, I was like, started to scream. I was really upset. I need to talk to her. I need to take her. She was like, I'm gonna take care of it for you. You didn't sign up to have your, photo taken as a young girl.
Yeah.
Been repeatedly raped. And so this woman said she didn't know anything about me. So she said, "Oh, I love this. What a beautiful photo of you. Where did you take this? You're 15 or how?" And I kind of raised my voice and said, "No, it's not beautiful. It's not art. I was being victimized by a group of traffickers run by the mafia, and this photo, and they didn't have permission to do this, and I need you to take it down."
Yeah.
So before we go into your story, I want to talk about your childhood a little bit and talk about the legacy of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't grow up with my dad. I started being molested as a young girl. I was raped at 11. Started running away from home. Eventually, I was kidnapped by traffickers, and a lot of men purchased me. But one thing that I always have loved so much is men of honor. I have 3 brothers. I'm absolutely in love with them. And I'm a tomboy because, I didn't even know my sexuality probably growing up because of everything that I went through, but I'm very happily married to Teddy, and we have 2 fur babies. But when you grew up, what was your idea of what a man is supposed to be, or a man of honor, or a good guy? What did that mean to you? Let's say go back to like 10.
Yeah. I honestly had no framework. Like we're talking about how, wrongly framing something depicts how you see. And for me, I grew up in a small town where my mom got pregnant at 16, and the town was so small that the man who was my father that never played the role of my father, he was in such close proximity that I would see him. Or, one gas station, one grocery store. So I would see this man that was my father, but I didn't know him to be my father. And that caused me to introspectively, when I was super young, it was, well, this is weird. This is something I'm curious about. And eventually the inadequacy that I felt turned to anger. And I thought, well, I had no context of what it meant to be a man. And, I was exposed to pornography at an early age, and I thought,
really, like what age?
So I think I seen it the first time when I was 11, and then saw it again at 13. And when I saw it at 13, I really saw it. And
what magazine was it? A magazine?
Yeah, so it was a Playboy magazine, but he also had like a Penthouse magazine and a Hustler magazine, and it was almost like levels of depravity and levels of how hardcore it was. So I went from seeing a naked image to two naked images having sex. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, if maybe that's how people engage in intimacy, and maybe if I engage in that, I'll feel like a man, and maybe I'll mitigate the deficit that I feel mentally and emotionally, because I just wanted to feel loved. And, in retrospect, what I wanted to hear and feel most was, son, I'm proud of you. And I thought, well, if I become, a good enough student, a good enough athlete, if I have enough relationships, if I get enough yeses and pats on the back and fist bumps and high fives, I'll feel like a man, because I didn't know what a man's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that is now, all these years later?
What I have found through having deep friendships and being a husband and being a father, I've experienced aspects of what it is to be a man, but what it means to be a man, because biologically, you can be male, but what it means to be a man is someone who has integrity, someone who has honor, that is a protector and a provider, that biblically based, it's like you're called to radah, like you're called to rule and reign on the earth in a certain way. So,
and that's for men and women.
Yeah,
to rule and reign.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like as a human being, as to be image.
I'm not a feminist, but I'm an equalist.
Yeah, 100%.
As a born again believer.
Yeah, 100%.
So, what do you think that fatherhood, being a man, is one thing?
Yeah.
There's this idea that I sort of surmised that even natural fathers are still father figures to someone.
Mm.
How do you think the world sees that today? And what do you think not having your father really be there as a father, how do you relate to individuals who are not perhaps your own, but your father figure?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel drawn to speak into a growing fatherless generation. I would say it's easy for me to see my childhood in the eyes of those who experienced what I didn't have. And I mean, like you were saying, it's like for me, the glimpses of what it meant to be a man was, during basketball season, like Coach B was like the closest that I experienced to someone that, because it was one thing to get called out, but it was another thing to get called up. And for someone to see something in me, to challenge me to be better or to push harder or to do more, not based on I'm trying to meet a metric. It's they see capacity in me that I can't see myself. And I think everybody needs somebody like that. And that's, regardless of if you are, either a spiritual or a biological father to someone, everyone needs to be fathered. And yeah.
So Man in the Mirror is really about these internal struggles. Sexuality is a thing.
Yeah.
In our restorative justice program, we have a lot of men that are paying for pursuing to purchase a prostitute person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time that was predicated upon just this perpetual eating and taking in pornography and gonzo porn and different levels of porn. And in today's world, it's really difficult for people to sometimes see pornography as something that can exacerbate pain and be connected to pain and trauma. And so, Josh, I really want to hear about you and your struggle and your history when you connected to pornography, filming, and all of that, and what happened and what was your mind and heart going through?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I move out to LA to, I study theater, move out to LA.
LA too.
Okay.
An actress, a lot of TV and film and commercials. Yeah.
So I was like, I was doing the grind and going to auditions and trying to make, trying to develop the perfect reel and, and then filming, like, back in the day where you had like an actual comp card, where you had a headshot on one side and 3 action shots on the other. I met essentially, at Saddle Ranch in West Hollywood on Sunset. 3 girls come up to me and they're like, "Hey, would you ever consider acting?" I was like, yes, like this is my moment. You're gonna invite me to meet with a casting agent, or maybe you're working on a project, or maybe you're doing something. And they're like, no, we're talking about pornography. And they use language that was similar to what I would be accustomed to, in that there's a studio that is in Sherman Oaks, and it's adjacent to Universal Studios. And, we can set up, an audition with you where you're going to meet with this casting director, and he's going to see if, you would be good, to be in the industry and whatnot. And all of it sounded like, this is shady. Like, I don't want to do this, but I'm kind of curious at the same time. And I think what played into that is, from the time I saw pornography at, 13 really to then 22, for those 9 years, I was very sexually active. So now living a promiscuous lifestyle in that way, and, having this insatiable appetite for sex, that really my appetite wasn't for sex, it was an acceptance, so that I felt something that I wasn't feeling.
So would you say that you were still searching to be loved, but then exacerbated into type of a
certainly. I would say certainly some type of addict. And I wanted to mitigate the worthlessness that I felt. I wanted to mitigate the fact that someone looked me in the eyes, for my entire childhood, and chose not to be my father, yet chose to be the father to, 2 other kids, and have this other home. And we're in government housing, and it's just me and my mom, and we're struggling to get by, and they've got like new cars and a big house and all this stuff. And it's like, why not me? And so for me, the way that I internalized that was, there must be something wrong with me. So if there's something wrong with me, only accomplishments and affirmation and accolades can mitigate, like if I put enough good dirt on my bad dirt, I won't feel so dirty. Yeah. So I'm in that space where they invite me into that, and I walk into, the meet with this casting director / porn agent. And he asked me 3 questions. He asked me, how did you grow up? Why are you in LA, and what do you hope to accomplish? And I should have known that was a super sketchy question to ask someone in an environment like that. Like, how'd you grow up? Tell me about your family. How'd you grow up? So I shared with him, grew up pretty much me and my mom. It's like, okay, he's
that's a type of grooming.
Yeah, 100%. Where it's like, it's so interesting, almost, that was 20 years ago, 11 years removed from the industry. I've had so many conversations with so many people, and the script's the same. How can I manipulate you and coerce you based on a deficit that you have in your life? And for me, it was, fatherlessness, and me seeking to attain something so I felt differently. There was, I remember the first shower that I took after the first porn scene I did, and they had like hand soap in this like stand-up shower that was just filthy. And I couldn't get the lube or like the feeling off of me. It was like, I remember it was like in the hair of my legs, and I just like couldn't get enough soap to get that feeling off of me, and just felt so disgusting. And, this is, 2006. So like not, the beautiful soft lighting that we have today. So there was like Kino flues and like directional lighting. So strobes where there was a strobe like underneath me and a boom right beside me, and just exposed in a way that I can't fully explain, but anyone that's experienced it fully knows.
When men struggle today, there's this deep connection to wanting to be sexual.
Yeah.
And even when they are happily married or looking for love,
yeah,
there's this idea that the grass is greener someplace else.
Sure.
What is that thing? And spiritually speaking, we know about the realm of darkness and temptation.
Yeah.
But a pastor that I really honor, one of the churches that I'm connected to is Gateway Church. And I love Gateway Church.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to do a conference there and do things around the legacy of fatherhood.
Yeah.
But if Pastor Morris, who we know as this incredible pastor for many, many years. And he said all these years, I was a young man and I had an affair with a young lady.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were married with a baby and she was 12.
Right.
What is that thing in men that is having a difficult time exposing to a friend, to themselves, the truth about someone who's possibly underage or sexual violence? Or sometimes people think that the precipitation of repeated sexual desire is separate than sexual assault or sexual violence.
Yeah.
But scripture teaches us that when we commit that type of sin, we actually
commit against our own body. Yeah.
And so let's tell me about that as you share your story and some of the stuff you went through.
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's multifaceted in that, you know, when you consume pornography, you are, you know, you're buying a lie, and if you believe a lie to be true, it becomes true to you, and as that lie starts to penetrate into your worldview, what happens is you live out that lie as if it's truth. And you might not want that lie to be part of how you are seen, but it most certainly impacts your thinking and your living. And I think, I mean, at the root, it's how prolific the pornography industry is. And at the root of any problem I've ever heard regarding sexually, it started with a deep-rooted wrong sexual ethic. And if your sexual ethic is developed by consuming pornography, well, you're consuming pornography that tells a story that's different than reality. And when you suppress reality, there's a real life impact on that, where, you know, 94% of pornography depicts violence. You know, one of the most fast-growing niches for pornography is incestual. Well, what are we seeing with kids? Average perpetrator for kids in America, 11 to 15 years old, in the 60%. It's even higher in Australia and Europe. And all these kids are saying, I'm raping my siblings because I'm addicted to porn that depicts exactly that. So the impact of us watching something and then connecting it to this emotional part of our brain where we're getting this dopamine hit and we're feeling something that looks like love, but it's actually lust. And at the end of the day, we're designed to be connected, but we're designed to be connected to the one who made us. And if we don't see through the lens of that relationship, all of it's going to be broken.
So you went through this process where you're not and never identified as gay.
Right.
But you got involved in filming that was for the purpose of filming. And actors who do films have played roles, women and men, not identifying, for the sake of the art. But in this case, it's not really the sake of the art unless you told yourself that.
Right.
How and why and what happened? And I say that to say this. I was in my book, Shame Undone, there's a guy, Bob Evans, really well-known producer. And there was a role, it was a really big role in the film. And I had been working a lot of really great films and TV series and shows. And someone introduced me to him. So he said, I want you to come over, you know, for a script reading. I thought, oh, great.
Yeah.
You know, I was really excited. And I get to his house, someone opens the door, and then this woman, she goes, oh, he's right down the hall. And I'm thinking, well, this is odd. I've never been in this enormous mansion. Why would I be walking down a hall all on my own? But I, you know, young actress, totally excited, you know, Hollywood. Okay, Hollywood's weird. Let's go for it. And I go down this hall, and it reminded me of the film The Devil's Advocate. Because when I walked to the edge of the bedroom, I could see, before I even saw him, I saw like this red velvet blankets and this huge wooden backboard that looked like that moving image in The Devil's Advocate. And he was sitting in bed with no shirt on, with the blankets there. And he was like, come sit here. And I froze and ran down the hall, tripped out the door. And it was after the scariest thing that I had experienced as an actor and a survivor of human trafficking and exploitation. And so I was purchased by couples.
Mm-hmm.
Some couples would film, some wouldn't. Some of the stuff that they did to each other that they wanted me to see was horrendous. So you're in a situation where now you're with men in film. How and why would that happen to a young man who doesn't even really want to do this anymore, but doesn't know how to get out, and then it gets worse?
So for 6 years, I was in the industry, and I think in 2012, I started like doing different things. Like, I would get invited to Vegas to, I'll be in the VIP lounge, and if you buy bottles, you get to hang out with me, and I would get, a few $1,000s to do that. And then, it was almost like my agent started like opening the door for me to see, well, I can make money doing other things outside of, just filming, porn, like for the studio. And then I said yes to doing like a shirtless party where I'm bartending at this party. And then I did a private event for someone. And that private event was like essentially me operating as a bartender for a group of guys. And I thought, like, that's weird, but this is who I am. This is what I do. Like, what's the big deal? And then they invited me to Paris to do the same thing. And, have a drink, have another drink, have another drink, have another drink. And then that turns into me waking up with a man on top of me. And I told myself after I came back, where like I made money, I consented to being there. This is my fault because this is who I am. So this is what I should, expect. And I started really wrestling with my mental health. And I started, I everyone pretty much like used like Viagra, Levitra, like to do the scenes. And then I started using Caverjack, where, you're injecting, a chemical, where like you have an erection for 4 hours regardless. But I started to do that because my head was like so distorted when I was having sex or on set.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you ever have thoughts of suicide? Or
certainly every day after that for almost 3 years, and tried multiple times. But after that, I started thinking, I can't do that. And there was just something about the director like telling me to like climax or telling me to do stuff. It's like something I became numb to. Like once, essentially, I was raped. Like once that happened, I felt like it was like rehashing that moment over and over again. And I was like, I can't escape this.
I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just your whole,
Yeah.
your childhood too.
Yeah.
I find that there's this thing going back to fatherhood, right? Men and women give us different things, moms and dads. We get something completely different than we get from our moms, from our dads.
Yeah.
My mom could say, "Hey, you look so pretty." And I could, "Oh, thanks, Mom." Well, my dad could say, "Baby, man, you look beautiful in those shoes." And I could just start bawling, which I did one time when I had a chance to really get to know him before he died. And we became very best friends. What would you say to men who are struggling with addiction to pornography, who have forgotten that they're father figures and that everyone is watching, or didn't grow up with a father, maybe they're younger and they just don't know what to do, and they've normalized it because they think that it's just sex, it's sexuality, it's fulfilling, it's normal?
I would say anyone that is living that way, more often than not, there's brokenness in your life, and there's either forgiveness that you need to extend to yourself, or forgiveness that you need to extend to someone that you don't believe deserves it. And for me, often we can believe, well, if reconciliation isn't going to meet my expectations, then what's the point of me extending forgiveness? And for a long time, I personally was, even out of the industry wrestling with, if he would have been there, my life wouldn't have been like that. And I had intense anger at times about that, where if you would have done what you were supposed to do, I wouldn't have ended up doing the things that I did. And while it did impact the way that I saw myself, which impacted the things that I chose to do, at the end of the day, I did those things upon my own volition. So I had to take ownership of my mistakes and extend forgiveness, because the only one that was impacted by my lack of unforgiveness was me.
I think one of my favorite scriptures is vengeance is mine, saith God, now will repay.
Yeah.
And for me to forgive traffickers and my dad for not being there, the Lord said, when you forgive, then vengeance is mine. And vengeance isn't necessarily, oh, I'm going to go and get people. No, I'm going to touch hearts and change hearts.
Yeah.
Vengeance is anything that where a person was wrong.
Right.
I'm going to make it right one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I cannot do it until you forgive.
Yeah.
Right? With the same measure you meet will be measured to you again.
Yeah.
When you finally left that whole industry, what was the moment of conversion, or the moment of, I'm out? I'm dropping the mic on this.
Yeah. So it was a day where I planned to take my life. So I was coming back from a shoot where I wasn't told what I was going to do, what I was going to be doing, and then just walked into a room and some horrific things happened to me. And on that day, so that I was in Atlanta and I was flying back to LAX, and on that flight, I was like, I know that I have a bottle of pain pills, and I looked up, if I take enough, I'll be sure to die.
What horrific thing?
Urinated on, like you name it, it abused in multiple different type of ways.
Attack.
Yeah. And the saddest part was, I could have said no, but I didn't. But I believed that my no didn't have any volition, because I had contractually committed to being there, even though I didn't know what I was doing.
I think it's extraordinary that a lot of times people look at adults or young adults and they assume always that the behavior is of their own volition, but not fully.
Right.
Get past their talking. One of the favorite scriptures is train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. And so, yes, it's true. We can make these decisions about sin and choose life or death in a moment. But when you didn't grow up learning how to do that, it's not fully on you at 20, 21, 22. Brain doesn't fully develop till 25, 26. Frontal lobe's at 30. And so the early 20s, depending on the abuse and the trauma suffered, it's very difficult to know a right decision from a wrong decision when you're searching for love and identity.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't all on you.
Right.
It wasn't all on you.
Sure.
Because if you look back, discovering who you are as a man of God, a married man, a man of honor, speaking all over the world, all over the nations, fighting for a cause, being loud and proud about what God has delivered you from, that you had fought for, it's extraordinary. And when you look back, you can say, I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't really even know it was wrong. I had an inkling, maybe.
Yeah.
But no one came.
Yeah, there was no guardrails in place.
Hey, son.
Yeah.
That's not who you. But you can do that. And you're doing that.
Yeah.
Now. So what would you say to men and to those struggling? Just how do they stop? How do they get out? They know God. They don't know God. They don't want to know God. But why should they stop? And one of the things I love is the word where we get the word intimacy from koinonia. It means to know and be known. That intercourse is really Adam knew Eve as God knows up. It's where we get the word intimacy intimacy from sex comes from that, but it's really about conception and something extraordinary. It's not violence. So we have a different depiction of what is naturally good for us, I think.
Yeah.
And the meaning of relationship and fidelity and love.
Yeah.
And so what do you say with leaders in the church, out of the church, in community, whoever they are, that are struggling with pornography addiction, that are struggling with thoughts and temptations that is really difficult for them to bear and they have not shared with anyone?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, number one, like Romans 12:2, it's like you're either being conformed by the world or being transformed by the renewing of your mind. Like, why is that important? So you can discern what is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will. There's a right and a wrong, and there's a good Father that's provided guide rails and a gateway to a better way. And I think you need to know that. Like, you need to know there is right and wrong. There is, there's a line in the sand. And there's a way that you're called to live that is not only, the way, but it's best for you. There's a Father in heaven that has your best interest, and there's a plan and a purpose for your life. So you're actually not only contributing to a catastrophe of, abortions, fatherlessness, trauma, abuse, so many, like all that stuff. It's like, like when you're consuming that, you're contributing to that, but also you're robbing yourself from impact. It's like I have the joy that I get to speak to different NFL teams, and I ask them, like, well, do you want as much capacity as God created you to have? Like, do you want all of it, or do you want to, just some of it? Because when you consume that, you're minimizing your effectiveness. Like, when there's an integrity gap in your life, you can't be the person that you were created to be because you see yourself as less than, and you're training yourself to see people the same way. So if you're created to love God and to love others and to rule and reign in this earth as men and women created in the image of God, you'll never be the person that you were created to be until you do the thing that you were created to do. And consuming pornography, it shifts that thinking where, like, people are not this, they're full of dignity and they have intrinsic value. They're objects for my manipulation and my pleasure. And the reality is, my life is not about me, and each and every person matters. So how do you change your thinking? Well, I need to change how I see people. And if I see people as God sees people, then and only then I can treat them with the value and the dignity and the respect they deserve. It's not about me not looking at another woman with lust because I'm married. It's about there's a person that's standing in front of me that have dignity and value, and they have worth, not based on what I think, based upon what God says. So if I believe that's the most true thing that is, then I have to live as that truth supersedes my feelings. And, Titus 2 talks about, well, if I say no to unrighteousness long enough, I'm actually going to develop an appetite. I can change my palate and I can change my thinking. And if I change how I think, I'm going to change how I live.
So, wow, Josh, so shame is undone in your life. And I want to thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to just like shake your hand. I want to say too that you are that man of honor, that father figure. And as a survivor, I can speak on behalf of the little girl in me, and even little boys and adults and who haven't really gotten beyond some of the things that they've suffered.
Yeah.
To be able to be transparent and expose the ills of what happened to you and what you participated in because of brokenness is really what the church, the ecclesia of God, what God really calls us to do, to shame darkness, to shame the devil, if you will, and to speak loud and excited and to cry out so that people understand, yes, this is something that I have been through, but you don't have to learn from me. And probably there are hundreds, if not thousands of people around the nation, around the world that look at you and they don't see anything that you've ever been through or anything that you ever did. They just see you as an extraordinary man of honor. And I'm so proud of you. And it almost had me in tears, but I didn't want to start crying. Thank you.
Thank you.
For spending time with me and for sharing and conversing.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, like, you know, it's always great to hear, like, you know, you wrote a great book, or you had a great talk, or anything like that. But, like,
what's the name of your book?
7 Lies That'll Ruin Your Life.
Okay.
But just,
and where can people go and get that?
Yeah. So, you know, Barnes and Noble and all the places.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your website?
JoshuaBroome.me. But I was going to say, it's like when someone looks me in the eyes, like heartfelt, and tells me that they're proud of me, and that comes from a genuine place, like that touches me in a way that is not duplicatable. You know, and everyone needs that, you know, regardless of any accolades or pats on the back, or, like, you know, whatever list that a book might make or anything like that. Like, anytime anyone looks me in the eyes with, you know, that's genuine, that's heartfelt, and tells me that they're proud of me, it means the world to me, and it touches me in a way that I think it heals a part of me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to say one last little thing. When I was trafficked, I had my best friend. His name was Dale, and he was gay, and he got caught up in pornography as it's akin to trafficking, and he actually, you know, anyways, he's not here any longer, and you made me remember him, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And so if there's anyone that is dealing with these issues and you don't know where to go, we will put some advice up so that you know where to go, but you are not alone. And when God causes you to be unashamed, that word comes from the Greek word purity, and purity is just surrendering to God and allowing yourself to move forward, because not everyone around you will talk about what they've been through, but we know for a fact that we all have been through so much trauma.
Yeah.
And if we can just get to the other side of pain, we can literally change the world now, but we have to be honest. Like Joshua is honest, transparent. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.